life.
All right, we're here today with Brent Crane, the Executive Director of Provo Food and Care Coalition, talking about the issues of panhandling. So Brent, I guess we wanted to start off with just asking what are some of the issues surrounding panhandling here in Provo and Utah surrounding areas?
Yeah, I think panhandling is an issue that we, kind of ebbs and flows. Sometimes it's an issue, sometimes it's not, sometimes it's, in the media limelight, other times it's not. But it's been a fairly consistent issue in our county for, probably 2 decades now. As more homeless, presented themselves as having a need and not having a place to go or a place to eat. And obviously our organization was formed, somewhat in response to those issues. But as far as I think the main issues of panhandling really go back to safety. It ties into maybe public policy and what's best for the community in terms of our interest with the issue and how we're going to confront it or deal with it or handle it. And then I think obviously we have to look at it from a legal standpoint because panhandling is illegal in Provo and in Utah County, and I know they have a statewide ordinance as well.
Cool. Are there any benefits from giving handouts to homeless people?
Well, I think, obviously that's a deeply personal question for the people that are panhandling. And so I think that there are some of our clients that are in sincere need, and this is one of the means, I guess, that they utilize, methods they utilize to meet their needs, whether it's housing or shelter or, food or, those kinds of things. But I think we also have to be more educated as a public to how they go about that and maybe answering the question of maybe there's a better way. Because a lot of times I think our community is very compassionate. We're very generous as a community. We want to help. I think it's innate in our desire to help. But sometimes giving through the form and method of panhandling only creates more problems and challenges and probably even some unintended consequences at that as well.
So going off that, what are some of those unintended consequences of panhandling? Why is panhandling maybe not the best solution in the long run?
Okay. Yeah, I think, I think first we have to look at the face value of it. Is the panhandler really in need of that food that they're saying they're in need of? Are they really in need of that housing that they're in need of? Are they even homeless? We've had recent studies that have been pretty much collaborated by other communities as well, that only about 3 in 10 people that are panhandling are actually homeless. The rest of those individuals are making money tax-free. It's kind of an uncomfortable thing. I think that's one of the challenges for the public is if we continually feed the problem, it's only going to get worse. And I think we have to look to the intent and of the panhandler, and are we being manipulated by the panhandler? That's not always the case, but in a lot of instances we are. They're manipulating our emotions, whether that's our desire to be compassionate or our desire to reduce our guilt because we don't want to see people on the street. But we find that a lot of panhandlers are not maybe being truthful in the message that they're portraying on their signs.
So what are some of the better solutions to help people? I mean, you talked about how people want to help, and I believe that people do in general want to help out, but maybe we just don't know the best ways to help people. What are some of the ways that we can help out as individuals?
Yeah, I think that, how we can help is, one, we have to understand the problem, I think, a little more clearly. There's a lot of services that are available that have been formed and fashioned by the community, many of those embodied here at the Food and Care Coalition, and many of those embodied in some of our service partners, some of which are on site and some of which, conduct those services within their own agencies. So there's a lot of services. There is no reason for a person to go hungry in Utah County. There's 3 square very, large meals given each and every day to our homeless community. So there's no reason for them to be going hungry because they're not turned away. When it comes to clothing and hygiene and showers and being able to do their laundry, things of that nature, we have adequate resources. When we start broaching housing, that's a more difficult one. Obviously we have housing here. We have other partners that provide housing. That's probably our biggest bottleneck, is trying to find housing. But I don't see most panhandlers going out saying, help me with my rent or help me get into an apartment. They're usually looking for something else. And so we've got to address that, and I think the community, maybe relaxing some of our zoning standards. I think understanding that there is a need for facilities like this, that it's better for homeless to actually be housed and have support services as opposed to wandering our streets without those services. I think that's I guess a picture of a more healthy community. And I think that getting involved. There's lots of service opportunities available for the public to get involved. If it's kind of alleviating their conscience, which I think we're all desirous to do. We feel compelled, we see a need, we want to help. That's just innate in our desire as human beings, right? But I think that we also have to understand some of the unintended consequences to that. And I'll give you maybe a short story that kind of solidified it in my mind. I was down at a store not long ago, and as I entered into the parking lot of this store, there was a homeless gentleman. I actually knew him very well. Very clean cut. He didn't have addiction issues. He didn't have mental health issues. He was an able-bodied adult. He had the ability to go out through the more traditional routes of looking for employment through the temp agencies or the employment agencies that are in the community. Again, unemployment's very low in our state, so we don't have a whole lot of room for improvement in terms of finding employment for people. But I saw this individual, and I saw a lot of people stopping and giving this individual money. And I wanted to stop and talk to him, but I didn't. I went into the store, got my things, and as I'm coming out, I saw a severely handicapped, disabled gentleman, both physically and mentally disabled, and he was being paid by this vendor to collect carts and to return them to the store and to organize that. And it's cold outside, he's probably working for minimum wage, and it kind of just solidified in my mind that here, as a society, we're helping this individual that's panhandling to a much greater extent. When he had the ability to go out and find employment, he was probably making $50 to $100 an hour tax-free, whereas this disabled individual that was making an effort, that was contributing to society, was only being paid minimum wage. And so for me, kind of, obviously the panhandling ordinance and poverty and homelessness in general, there's going to be people that will even fall through the cracks of our systems that we put in place. It's always about the one, right? But we also have to understand that, I think that we have to be aware that maybe if we continue to give, that, as I've seen in other communities, it only gets worse. It doesn't get better unless we address those systemic issues. And you're better off doing that working with an agency and volunteering, advocating on public policy, maybe helping out, on the housing side of things. I just think that that's the better way.
So as someone who's more educated on the issue, what do you personally do to help out those in need?
Well, personally, I wear different hats. So obviously, being the executive director of a nonprofit facility that reaches out to the homeless, I'm very keenly aware of their needs. And our organization has grown over time with the community's ability to address those needs. And so we occupy a beautiful facility that has not only our services couched in it, but we have the mental health authority, we have a dental program, we have medical services that are all brought to the table here. It's kind of like a one-stop shop here for our clients. But keep in mind that sometimes we get this occasionally, particularly with a lot of the churches in the area. They'll bring somebody to our attention and they weren't aware of all the things we were doing on their behalf, or they weren't aware of maybe some of the personal behaviors that maybe led to them being temporarily suspended from our services. And of course the panhandler or the client's not going to tell them that. So I think for me, the whole issue kind of reminds me of a old cartoon that I grew up with called Jellystone Park, and it had two bears, Yogi and Boo Boo. And what did Yogi and Boo Boo do? They basically stole picnic baskets and food that was left out by unsuspecting campers that they had left on picnic tables or in their camper windows or what have you. And of course Ranger Smith, he's trying to provide a safe environment for everybody, right? The bears and for the campers. And I guess the question is, was it the bears that needed to change their behavior, or was it the public? Was it the camper? And I think in this case there's a big argument that I think has a lot of credibility, in that maybe we need to change the public's behavior and how we address it. In other words, if we continue to give, it's only going to get worse, and are we really meeting their needs? And so that's always been kind of to the I guess top of mind awareness for me, knowing the issue. A couple suggestions I would maybe offer the public. Personally, I realize that the panhandling ordinance and the person's desire to get help and the community's ability to offer that help sometimes might not align perfectly. Me personally, the only time I would ever consider giving to a homeless individual is if I knew they were mentally ill, severely mentally ill, because I know some of the roadblocks that they're going to encounter. Generally speaking, though, I think we have to kind of answer our own conscience. Sometimes I think our conscience tells you to give. I think we probably need to do so, but do so from a point of education and understanding what's available, and understanding that the client might not always be truthful in that exchange. On the other side, I think that sometimes it compels us to give, and we should follow our conscience in doing so. So I'm not telling the public, don't under any circumstances give to a panhandler. But I think become more educated on the issue, understand what services are available, and understand that it does create problems, particularly for the business community. If you're giving to a panhandler, we actually have a panhandling card, and that's something maybe you show on camera here, but these panhandling cards to me is a great solution, because it allows us to approach a panhandler in a safe way. It allows us to approach the panhandler and let them know that yes, there is an ordinance that prohibits you from panhandling in aggressive manner in certain locations, by check cashing institutions, in roadways, where it's going to impede traffic, that kind of thing. But also, it gives, on these cards, gives you our address and all the services that we offer here, and we certainly welcome the public dropping off those individuals to us. Because again, as we found out, a lot of the panhandlers, that may say, hey, I'm here representing that I need help for food, with their sign, right? I can't tell you how many times I've seen a panhandler get somebody buy fast food for them, only to see them repeatedly throw it in the trash, because that's not really what they want. They want the money, because they're unencumbered with what they do with it. And maybe if the public knew what they did with it, they would probably maybe be less apt to give in that form. So I think, there's been an evolution kind of in panhandling over the years. Kind of at first it was need-based. I need food, I need a job. Then it kind of moved to guilt-based signs, kind of shaming the public into giving. And then when the public reacted to that, they kind of adjusted and went to humor-based signs. Why lie, I need a beer. Or, one of my favorites that I saw was, my wife's being held for ransom. I need 98 cents, to get her released. The fact that it was not $1 or $10 and the fact that he used humor, what does it do? It elicits emotion. And what emotion does that elicit? A smile kind of, makes us happy. And if we're happy and we're smiling, we're more likely to give. Well, that's exactly what the panhandler wants. And then, of course, public adjusted to that. And so now they're using, a lot of times they're using signage that make themselves appear to affiliate with specific groups, like our veteran community. I'm a vet. Well, are they really a vet? Most of the times we've stopped and talked to panhandlers and vetted it out. They're not really a vet. But they're banking on the goodwill that the community has towards our veteran community as a means to get people to be more likely to give. So again, I think it's just about educating the public. I think it's about knowing what resources are available. And then I think, like anything, just, adhering to our conscience. That's probably the best advice I can give.
So you talked about some of the facilities that the Provo Food and Care Coalition offers. So what is the main purpose of the Provo Food and Care Coalition?
Yeah, well, I think it starts with meals. The homeless typically don't have a place to prepare meals, right? So we provide 3 square meals a day, 7 days a week. Then from there, obviously, the homeless population not having a place to shower or maybe do their laundry, we provide shower facilities, laundry facilities. We provide ancillary hygienic services as well. We distribute, 50 to 60 different hygiene items to our clientele. We have a barbershop here on site, so they can, stay on top of it if they're going out and interviewing for employment. From there, we have counseling and case managers that work with them one-on-one. I think that's one of the things that we really offer the community is safety. You can get involved here. You can help us carry out that mission, but not necessarily take it home, and maybe be exposed to some danger that might occur if you take a homeless individual home. And there's been situations where that has not ended well. So I think that's another element to that. Then we provide housing. We have 38 rooms here on site that we basically interview our clients and see who's really making a sincere effort to change their life. We try to make sure that they connect to mental health services and other services, substance abuse services that are in the community. Again, there's a lot of services here through ourselves, through our on-site partners, and through other programs and services in the community that address those needs. But if I'm speaking honestly, our biggest issue is housing. We need to identify more low-income and affordable housing in our community. This just doesn't impact our homeless population. This impacts our student population. This impacts our families that maybe are single earner households, or maybe don't have the income level that others might have in our community. So read a book once called The Good Society, and one of the key points in that was that our community fabric is only as strong as our weakest link. And so I think this facility embodies all that is good in our community, and the fact that we're willing to listen and hear what the need is, and also respond to it in a responsible manner, and also on the other side expect our clients to be accountable and take responsibility for their decisions as well.
So last question, we discussed some different solutions, some different ways the community can get involved. So do you think that panhandling can ever really go away, or I guess in other words, do you think the problem can be solved?
I do. I think it takes a resolve and a commitment. If me and my neighbors enforce panhandling, and we give these panhandling cards out that kind of redirects them to available services, and they continually get that message, and we're unified in that. I think there's no reason for people to panhandle if there's not money being distributed. And so, yes, I think it absolutely is solvable, but it's going to take organizations like ourselves being empathetic to our residential community and our business community and realizing that panhandling impacts their businesses adversely. I don't think it's maybe the appropriate way for people to find employment and find work and have their needs met. And so I think if we stick together, then absolutely it is solvable.
Thank you.
Yeah. Is that all right?
Yeah.
You have to